This is the Hello World podcast, where we talk about habits of success, habits of excellence, entrepreneurship, leadership, learning and development, and outlook that will help us succeed through life. This is Louis Banta, CEO and Chief Trainer of Learning Just Made Better, or LJMB. And this is episode 13 of the Hello World podcast. Episode 13 is focused on letter E, entrepreneurship. A lot of us are really thinking about this, thinking about making that leap to putting up our own business. Some of us are currently in the middle of this tight situation, thinking of ways on how we can really meet our revenue targets and adapt our selling techniques in this new normal. Our guest for today will talk about precisely what I mentioned, selling in this new environment. And our guest brings with him 40 years of experience in combined global sales, sales management, business development, country and new territory expansion, and experience. He is a hands-on sales and sales management practitioner in countries like Australia, New Zealand, Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, China, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and Brazil. So he has really gone around across continents, I'm sure, testing and succeeding with sales techniques. He is also a sales and business development consultant, mentor, coach, and trainer. And with that kind of experience, the quantity and the quality of experience, it definitely deserves to be shared to a lot of people. He has a deep understanding of human resource software market, last 20 years devoted to HR software solution sales in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. He's an HR and e-learning independent consultant. I mentioned e-learning, something that's really very relevant, has gotten a lot of attention during this pandemic. He's an expert in driving sales revenue, market expansion, and profitability in large organizations and startup environments within Asia Pacific and the Middle East. He was a consistent peak performer with strong experience in software solution selling, tactical and strategic sales planning, sales resource management and improvement, results attainment, skills attainment, training, sales process optimization, and subsequent change management. You can see the broad experience that our guest brings to the table today. He's also an outstanding global business development expert, prolific writer in the areas of sales, and not only sales, in mental health as well, as he is a huge advocate of mental health with focus on anxiety and depression. Last thing I'd like you to know about our guest is that he is a massive supporter of the Filipino people and the Philippines, as his new home has been here for almost 3 years, and is married to a Filipina. And I've been interacting with this guy in my short stay in LinkedIn for the past 3 months, and I would call him Kabayan. So I'd like you to all welcome in Hello World podcast, Kabayan Edward Musiak.
Hello world.
Thanks for being here, Edward.
It's my pleasure. It's nice to talk to you.
And I know that we're doing this recording on a Saturday, and thanks for saying yes. I know it's a weekend. It's just that your posts really caught our attention. You would share a mix of value-adding content, as I mentioned earlier, in the areas of sales. And I also saw you posting a lot about HR technology, and also saw you posting about your advocacy, your passion on helping people with or experiencing mental health issues. But in this episode, the focus is really in being able to help business people out there, sales leaders, no matter what level are they in the hierarchy? I spoke to executive sales leaders. They still are needing guidance in navigating through this new environment when it comes to selling. What about your business, Edward? You have your own sales enablement consultancy, and you started it, I understand, right before the pandemic. How did this crazy chaos around us affect your business?
Well, it's not something I really want to repeat again, to be
Uh-huh.
perfectly frank.
Okay.
I decided that after a very, very long time, 4 decades of the corporate world, that, I wanted to get away from everything. There were a lot of things associated with the corporate world that I no longer wanted to do. The
Yes.
politics, the pressures, etc. And there was a freedom that I wanted to experience, to be able to do what I wanted to do, but do it in using my hours and my times and etc. Sadly, I did it 1 month before the pandemic happened. Um, and I mean, to say it in a nutshell, I mean, the world came crashing down. I mean, essentially, business stopped. You know, which for the first month wasn't really much of an issue because it was nice to unwind, but it was very, very hard. I mean, getting new customers, establishing a name, um, trying to earn anything was brutal. And I would say the first 3 months were, I mean, there were tremendous lesson learning, but it's not really something I'd like to repeat again. So
Yeah.
yes,
Sure.
it was certainly bad timing.
Okay. And you said a month before the pandemic hit us. So I imagine you entered the year. You were still employed, Edward. Yes,
Yep.
when we entered 2020, made that brave, the courageous decision. I'm going to put up my own consultancy, and then all of these things happen. Now, more on how did you adapt? And I'm thinking that it really has something to do with you getting from that 40 years of strong, solid sales experience. How did you adapt? And what is this new normal that we now have in sales and selling?
In fact, there's a couple of things in this. I mean, the first one is, and I have to give her credit, is my wife. I have a Filipino wife who runs her own business, is extremely successful, and in typical Filipino female fashion, is amazingly tough and resilient. And she was a great mentor and a great encourager, you know. And I've also been a massive believer in grit. I didn't practice it as much as I should have, but I'm a big believer in that. And I think it was you only have two choices: you lay down and give up,
Mhm.
and there's no upside to that, or you stand up and say, okay, I'm going to do something about it. And the first thing was to go out there and get known and let people know that you exist. And LinkedIn and a number of people on LinkedIn who became mentors helped tremendously, and people who I saw on LinkedIn who um, were great examples, who were doing the same thing. And we were able to share and learn and from each other. But it was hard. I mean, I'd like to say that it was easy, but it was very, very tough doing it. Grit and my wife, I think, are the answers to your question.
I like that just affirms what we have been saying before, that at times, if not all the time, behind a successful man is a woman
Yeah.
who really provide that encouragement. Yeah. So can you walk us through some specific things that you did as form of adapting to selling in this new normal? You said when the pandemic hit us, it all hit us well very hard. You know my story as well, from having 20 people to support in a flourishing training business in the past years. All of my training engagements got pushed back, and we had to jump immediately to virtual training. What about you? Three things that really showed your immediate adoption or adaptation in this new normal.
I think the first one was to stop and take a breath and think. It's kind of you know I realized pretty soon, and I was lucky that way, that what was required was to sit back and say, okay, the world's changed, and everyone was talking about the new normal, and everyone was talking about, but it was, what does that mean to me? you know
Mhm.
what environment am I now in? How does that affect me directly? So, and identifying that. Now that sounds pretty straightforward and simple, but in sales, unless you know what a customer's problems are, you can't sell to them. So I had to apply those rules to myself. And
Mhm.
then once I kind of understood what was going on, was okay, what is my response going to be to the particular problems that I've identified for myself? And the problems were, you can't, you need to make money. And I'm a salesperson, so I needed something to sell, right?
Yeah.
And so the obvious ones were my skills,
Mhm.
right? Being able to talk about what I've learned. Another thing that I wanted to do was to help. One of the things I've done in the past with companies is help them open up new territories or help them with new products in new territories. Was so in addition to selling my skills, was reaching out to companies and helping them bring their products into markets such as the Philippines.
Mhm.
Um, so it was, what's the problem? How does that adapt to myself? How do I now apply that? And I had to draw on skills that I didn't have. So, for instance,
Mhm.
marketing is something I'm not naturally good at. I'm good at one to one, like we're doing now. Marketing is a
Yes.
whole different issue. Um, and so it was adapting, it was identifying. It's the same as, I guess, running a business, being able to say,
Mhm.
what are the problems I've got? You can't fix a problem unless you know what that problem really is. So there was a lot of
Yeah.
analysis, and that took a good 3 or 4 weeks to just sit there and think that through very carefully.
Well, the world was really, you know, s- just on state of shock,
Yeah,
especially that 4 weeks. Yes,
yeah,
nobody knew what to do. Companies did not have a ready BCP page to use as a response.
yeah,
So yes, you made use of that opportunity to get stuck at home to really take time and think.
yeah,
And you put up a sales enablement consultancy in the Philippines. And Edward, I know several people who are also in the same line of business. Really, uh, I'd say thriving practice in
yeah,
the last 10, 15 years. Lots of the economy is good, lots of competition, lots of growth as well. And just trying to imagine how difficult that first month was. Of course, we did not know that it's going to hit us. We've heard of COVID when the year started, but didn't know that it will reach Philippine shores so that fast. That first month, you put up your practice. I guess you were already having clients in the pipeline. You already had an idea of what
yeah.
services you're going to provide. You were starting. Can you just describe that first month without COVID in the picture?
Um, so the easiest thing to way, for me, I was lucky because there aren't many advantages to being older, except for
Mhm.
one: you get to know a lot of people.
Okay.
And so, step number one was to reach out to them and reach out
Mhm.
to the people who I knew as either friends or mentors or colleagues or people I knew on LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and start to develop a relationship and say, look, here is what I have to offer. And I was kind of lucky in the sense that early on, what I didn't want to do was deliver one to many type work. I wanted to do one on one type work. And that kind of fitted in really well because the one to many time at that particular time, we hadn't yet embraced this virtual world yet. We hadn't
Mhm.
embraced Zoom and Teams, and so that wasn't there yet. That was coming very, very quickly. But already I had kind of, luckily, decided what I wanted to do was do a more one-to-one. So be able to have clients who are salespeople, sales managers, and help them individually. And that was much, much more easy to adapt, either for something as simple as WhatsApp, a 15-minute phone call or a 30-minute phone call a week. And that's how it started. I fortunately fell into that decision of a one-to-one approach versus a one-to-many approach.
So it's more on sales coaching and sales mentoring.
Yeah, doing it. And there are a lot of people doing one-to-many, a lot. And there's a lot of good people doing it. So I wanted to take a different take on it.
Okay. There's this phrase that's most often used in 2020. Actually, there are a lot. And you can see memes in social media, phrases that you use in video calls. But this phrase, new normal, has been adapted to everything. The new normal in education, the new normal in learning, the new normal in HR. How do you see, or perhaps describe this ongoing and upcoming new normal in selling? If I am a sales manager, sales executive, what is this new normal in selling, Edward, that we're talking about?
I think a number of things have changed. Salespeople, there is a sales 101 handbook, set of processes that was applicable back 40 years ago, and it's still applicable today, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's pre-COVID or ongoing COVID. But there are, within that, things that aren't spoken to but are assumed, but they play a critical part. So for one of them is that, as good salespeople rely on physical feedback, verbal feedback, body language, right? You learn to read people. When you watch them, when they folded their hands, when they crossed their legs, you could gauge if they were telling the truth. You could gauge if they had a question that they wanted to ask but were afraid to ask. That's gone now. And I've heard people argue that, okay, that really hasn't gone because we're on this virtual world. Well, that's not actually really true, and I can see you, Louis, from your shoulders up. I can't see the rest of you. A lot of people don't show themselves during calls.
Agree.
Okay. So a large part of the sale, a large, very important part of the sales component for a salesperson has now been removed. How do I gauge that person? How do I interpret their reaction to what I have to say? So that's been very, 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 that's changed things dramatically. I think the other thing that's changed is that people are still in panic mode, and so getting people's attention is difficult. Salespeople have got pressure from sales managers who are panicking because the sales are zero or a little bit above zero. So the salespeople are panicking. Sales managers are getting pressure from people higher up. The people higher up are getting pressure. And so everyone's in this kind of reactive mode. And in order to conduct a successful sales engagement, it requires this sort of interaction as like you and I are having. But that requires time, that requires attention. And it's getting that person's attention that is having, it requires salespeople to learn new skills in getting a person to say, okay, I'm prepared to share 15 minutes of my time with you.
In Zoom, right? In Zoom or Teams.
Whilst I'm worried about whether I'll keep my job, whilst I'm worried about what will my boss say. They've got all these other things happening that was not going on pre-March. So that's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
You made very critical key points here, Edward. First one is the science, as we may refer to it as a science of selling, has not changed. The fundamentals
Yeah.
are still there. The sales process, the sales cycle, yes, from your lead generation all the way to principles in negotiation and closing the deal and after sales are still there. What changed is the delivery platform. What
Yep.
changed is the selling environment.
Yeah.
Okay? You also made a very important point. The change in sales and in selling environment has taken away that power from salespeople, experienced salespeople like, let's say, you and me, who I like your what you pointed out, that instinctive ability to interpret body language.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
crossing legs or crossing arms
Yep.
or just micro facial expressions that
Yep.
you may not be able to see in Zoom because of
Yep.
video resolution.
Yep.
Eh? Or the size of relief, paralanguage,
Yep.
the voice tone. Wow. The salesperson in this new normal who has been used to having all of that feedback that you said would need to. Now I'm thinking, what kind of training, what skills adjustments does a sales professional need to be able to do now? Because there can be that tendency to get stuck. Okay, I'm meeting with the client through Zoom or MS Teams, but the change in technology need to be accompanied by a change in behavior of the salesperson.
They
What
do.
specific tips would you give a salesperson now who's in front of somebody in Zoom without all of that feedback?
I,
What
you
are
know,
your practical tips?
everything I'm going to say was true before COVID.
Uh-huh.
The problem is, or the challenge is that most of us never practiced it, right?
Mm,
To the degree that it needs to be practiced now. I think the first thing is, the biggest challenge right now is getting a person's attention. How do I get Louis Banter's attention? He's got a lot on his plate. He's got staff to take care of, bills to pay, um, and every month he worries about how will business be next month. Now I'm trying to sell him something. How do I get his attention? And I think part of that is empathy. I've got to understand and I've got to apply empathy, and I have to understand your situation. So, if I'm in the same boat, and I am,
mm-hmm.
what will I respond to? And you've really got to think that through. If I get an email and it's not specifically written to me, someone hasn't done the research and specifically worded it in a way that relates to Edward, I'm gone. Within the first 6, 7, 8 words, I've deleted that email. I just don't have the time. I've got too many other things to worry about. And then if I do manage to get 5 minutes of Louis Banter's time, I think the very first thing that to do is I've just got to be brutally honest, okay,
Mm-hmm.
about me, about my product, about what it
Mm-hmm.
can, about what it can't do. I don't have the time now to build a relationship with Louis. I just don't. It might happen,
Yes.
you know, but it, to begin with, I don't. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that bond is created through one of empathy and honesty. In me being able to quickly understand what are the issues. I've done my research. I've spent a day or 2 days getting to know who Louis Banter is, what I think drives him, what I think are his ups and his downs, and why I think there may be a gap that could be fixed with my particular solution. If I haven't done that amount of pre-work, Louis Banter is
Mm-hmm.
going to go, Edward, I've heard you're a nice guy, but basically, no, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that research is the thing that I think is going to make the difference. And it means that for one call, you could be spending a day doing research. That call may not go anywhere, but I don't think there are any shortcuts. Now, the world may change in a year, but right now, it's carefully picking who it is that you want to talk to and putting in that time, talking to people who know Louis Banter, getting
Mm-hmm.
something back, and then hoping that that will pay off. And it may not,
Mm-hmm.
but that's our world now. I don't know that the world of shortcuts is gone.
And there is a lot of uncertainty. I agree with you. We don't know how things will be next year.
We don't.
Some experts say it's until 2021, 2020. But as a salesperson, you have to deliver.
Yeah.
I also like what you mentioned. What you said was applicable before. That's the principle of KYC. We call it KYC now.
Yeah.
Know your customer.
Yep.
We did not have that term before, but it's simply doing your homework.
Yep.
And it's to all of our sales professionals and sales leaders who are listening. I use the phrase "back to basics." It's still back to basics.
Yeah.
First thing that you mentioned, just trying to break down what you mentioned, Edward, is attention. You said it so simply. How to get attention when there's so much that's competing with the salesperson. And you made me realize a lot of salespeople who send me messages, even in LinkedIn, Edward. I just got back to LinkedIn and I will be surprised. I will accept a connection. And then in less than 5 minutes, that connection sends me something templated.
Yep.
It's templated, right?
Yeah.
And of course, first line, you get turned off already.
Yep.
You don't read it, you don't respond anymore, and then they send follow-ups. So the more you get irritated. Attention. You mentioned, and am I correct, Edward? Your tip is for us to be able to get attention.
Yeah.
The keyword is empathy. Yes, and being able to. Some say social media is a very good place to really showcase what you have, but also showing a lot of empathy.
Yeah, I think I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention people's names or not, but I have a great mentor on LinkedIn, and she helped me a great deal and taught me a lot about establishing relationships on LinkedIn. And
Go ahead and give a shout out.
Okay, well then, Virginia, you helped me tremendously. So Virginia Bautista, hello, Virginia. And I wasn't very good at that. And I think that nowadays, where the world's changed is you really need to build those relationships before you can sell. Everybody now is just preoccupied with so many things, and I will give the time to those people who have given the time to me, and I will listen to them, and I'll want to work with them. But cold, why should I? I mean, I just don't have this. I've got bills to pay and deals to close, and everybody wants a little bit of my time, and I want to see how my daughter's doing at school. So you instinctively want to deal with those people who have made the effort and who also have personalized their approach to you. And I think that's the key. That you mentioned it yourself. If you're still using templates, it's time to get out of sales. Go do something else. Templates are gone, man. It's over. It just doesn't work.
There's one thing common between us, Edward. In this time of pandemic, I also reached out to Coach V, as I call her, Coach Virginia Bautista. And the same period of time, this is relevant to our discussion. I was also listening to Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
I have only because I have more time to spend did I open YouTube and saw a lot of Gary V stuff. Gary V and Coach V. What a coincidence.
Yep.
And Gary V would say, give, give, give.
Yeah.
And then ask.
Yes.
Very simple. Give, give, give. And then he would also say, he day trades attention. The first thing that you need to do is to be able to get somebody's attention. So we're both products of VB. We both benefited from that perspective of, yes, during this time, especially during this time of crisis, get attention, show empathy, add value. You said get rid of those templates.
Yep.
Could you just expand on that for sales professionals who may need more guidance on, because they've been trained, Edward, you know how sales organizations would do it. They have scripts and spiels and ready to copy paste email, and it's email marketing or social media marketing or even text. It's scripted. So what can a sales manager now do? The company would say adhere to scripts. What's a practical tip there?
Well, I think my answer is get rid of the scripts. But
Uh-huh.
let's go back to a component of what you just said. So I
Mhm.
don't know whether you remember, but back in the older days, you're much younger than I am, but salespeople used to talk about the elevator pitch. So you would walk into an elevator, talk to this one person there, and they would ask, "What do you do?" And you had what, between floors, 45 seconds to answer that.
Mhm.
Now, that sounds like something very simple. In fact, it's unbelievably difficult to
Mhm.
concisely, succinctly say what you do in 45 seconds. So now let's move that forward. So now I'm a salesperson, and so I have to decide, okay, which industry am I in? Am I
Mhm.
selling to finance? Am I selling to F&B? Am I
Uh-huh.
selling to media? Okay. They all have their own individual problems. At what level am I selling? Am I selling to a VP of HR, a CFO, a CEO? They all have
Mhm.
individual problems, right?
Yep.
And so now you're starting to see all this huge intertwining of links. And now you need to, because of our current situation, you need to generally say, okay, it's a CFO at an F&B company in the Philippines. Now, how are they doing in the Philippines? What would the typical problems be? And of that, and then you need to validate whether, in fact, there's a chance that that particular CEO or CFO in that particular F&B company would be experiencing some version of those problems. And then you would
Mhm.
build a script around that. Most salespeople don't want to do that because that takes time. And so they still want to do the, I talked about this, someone mentioned it to me yesterday, the spray and pray approach. I'll send out 1,000 emails.
I like that. I like that.
I'll spray out 1,000 emails and pray
Mhm.
that one guy responds. I mean, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work,
Mhm.
and you lose the same amount of time at the back
Mhm.
end. So you may as well spend that time at the front end and really get to understand the individual you're trying to get to. And at least if you do that and they say no, you've done it intelligently. And this has happened so many times. That
Mhm.
person may well remember that approach that he said no to now and come back to you in a year or 6 months or 9 months' time later saying, you know what, there was this guy who reached out to me. I rejected him, but he was one of those rare salespeople who reached out to me in an intelligent, empathetic way.
Mhm.
So there's no downside to doing it. That's,
Mhm.
you drop, spray, and pray. Do your homework.
I believe it comes from the mindset as well. We've heard of this one in sales. It's a numbers game.
Yeah,
Right? And while it's true, it's really a numbers game. That may have led people to just say, "I'll use a template, spray." And yes, if it's a numbers game, I just need to send it to more and more, spray it to more and more people. So if 1 out of 100 responds, I still have some. But that was, I believe, Edward, that was a thing of the past. The
yes,
focus on sales effectiveness in the past decade was really more efficiency,
yep,
making your efforts count more. Also, you said an important point, and to our sales professionals listening out there, there's a tendency for you to just stick with the scripts.
yep,
Maybe because, and you can validate this, Edward, salespeople are more product oriented,
they
still
are.
very product oriented.
And I think
Yeah.
leads to another very, very important point. The world has
Mhm.
changed a great deal. If what you're doing as a salesperson is selling product, you're in the wrong business. We're not in the business of selling product. We're in the business of solving problems. I dare say that there are a lot of salespeople talking to prospects where the prospect actually knows more about the product than the salesperson does. Prospects actually, this is a shock to people, go out and do research. The internet has allowed them to do research. They know your company, they've read about it, they know about your product suite. Your job's not as so much to sell the product. They've read about the product. What they want to know is, how does that product help them in their particular business in this current economic and social environment. And that's
Mhm.
your value add. If you're still pushing a product, it's not going to happen. You've now got a very smart, intelligent audience.
Who has access to everything else in just a
Absolutely,
click in Google. Yes.
absolutely.
Who may even rebut you if you say the wrong thing about the product because
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
and they've done their, and more often than not, they've actually done their homework. They've called people and they've got references, and I mean, it's happened. I've seen that happen where I've seen a salesperson do a pitch, and the other person has brought up the names of two accounts that were actually dreadful references. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
now you're in trouble. It's over, right? You haven't done
Mm-hmm.
your homework, and the other person has. So
Okay.
we're in the business of solving problems.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in the
Really
business of selling.
fundamental. You mentioned earlier the tips, the back to basics is still applicable. I
It
like
is.
it when you said solving a problem. Just to cite, yesterday I was in a call with the country manager of a center in Australia. I was linked with that person to do interviews for an upcoming project. And my bad, I assumed that I sent something, I sent my profile and just jumped straight to the interview. At the final minute, he would say, I don't know much about you.
Yeah,
I didn't respond. You didn't read my, you
yeah.
didn't read my. So I started by saying what I do is solve problems because he said, "Are you a speaker? Are you a trainer? Are you a facilitator?" I said, "What I do is solve problems." And that's essentially what a salesperson does. You brought us back again to the basics. The pitfall of too many salespeople is being product oriented. No offense meant to. I know that there are some consultative sellers out there. I'm now throwing some terminology there. A lot of stereotypes, Edward, in here in the Philippines, that if you speak so well, if you can present a product, you are good in sales. Okay? And that now has this presents, or sorry, this current situation now presents the shift in skills that the Edward said you have to get attention, and you can't get attention just by focusing on products. So
I think what's
Edward,
happened.
go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've become consultants. We're consultants now.
Mhm,
That's the difference. We're not product salesmen. We're consultants.
mhm. It's been there for the longest time.
Yeah,
Now we really need to embrace it, just
yeah,
like technology has been, a lot of us has been forced to adapt to technology. We should be forced to adapt to, you know, a body of knowledge that's long been existing there. We
yep.
just don't. And here in the Philippines as well, selling before has been mostly based on relationships. I'm sure that you've had
Yeah,
a experience of that,
yeah,
Edward.
yeah.
We know the client anyway. The client will not leave us. No, the client will renew, and people get relaxed. And all of a sudden, even if the friendship is there or the relationship is there, business is business.
Very much so. And it happens, and it's going to happen more and more. Especially now when purses are tight, budgets are tight. And I see it happening with friends where they get the phone call or the email saying, dear John, you will always be a good friend. However, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the business relationship cannot continue. And that's how it is. Yes, that used to exist before, but I think now that's going to accelerate, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think that's
Mm-hmm.
a bad thing at all. It just means it's on us to do our job better, more professionally, and to continue to give value to the customers we have
Mm-hmm.
and the prospects we have, so that we can retain their business.
Mm-hmm. So yes, my insight here is that the tools, the principles have been there
They
for
have,
quite a while.
they have.
Yeah.
I think it's just that now we really have to apply them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, you have no choice. I mean, that's the name of the game. I mean, I'll tell you a little story. Just going back
Go
to what
ahead.
we were talking about earlier, I was on a joint phone call with some partners of mine, and we were talking to a large organization about them becoming a partner of ours. And their opening statement was, "I tell you what." why don't you tell us what you know about us and our business model,
Mm-hmm.
and that can help start create the foundation for a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now you're in trouble. If you haven't done your research,
Uh-huh.
everything you've planned for this 1 hour phone call has gone down the toilet because their opening gambit is you tell us what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like
Mm-hmm.
to know what you know about us. Wow. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it took everybody by shock. Now, fortunately,
Mm-hmm.
we knew something about them, but there was a lesson. Don't go into any call like that cold because people just don't have the time. They want to deal with people who have made the effort.
Mm-hmm. What comes to mind is the order taker phrase, Edward.
Yeah,
Yep. You go to a meeting. Okay, it's an initial meeting anyway. It's a scope, perhaps a scoping meeting if it's a service meeting. So I just listen to the customer. I have
yes,
a standard set of questions,
yeah,
and I just write down, and then perhaps say, okay, I'll get back to you.
yeah,
Talk to perhaps other members of the sales team. But you pointed, wow, that's a true story. It could happen to you guys.
yeah,
So don't get to meetings unprepared. You've lost, you will lose a customer. If I could imagine, if it were me, I was not able to say anything relevant. I would get out of that that
yeah,
call of embarrassment.
yeah. No
Edward.
choice. You have to end the call, but that's the end of that
Mm,
business, right? As well.
mm. Because you can't fake it. Yes,
No,
at that point, the customer already got you. Okay.
and they know. I mean, it's even worse when they've done their research about you and you haven't done the research about them,
Oh my. Mm.
right? So,
And it doesn't happen all the time, right? But imagine if 1 out of 10 customers would do that. You better, I'm not addressing our sales professional listeners. You want to know how to sell in this new normal? Then you have to go back to the basic principles. You take them seriously. And just make some tweaks because Edward, I think people are saying what we know before is no longer relevant, no longer applicable. What the point of our discussion here is go back to the basic
yeah.
principles and just tweak the application.
And I think that we could, before there was the ability to bypass components of the process. You know, now there is no leeway.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot bypass. You have to follow the steps. You have to adhere them. When I started 43 years ago, we were told to sell benefits, never sell. A product, always sell benefits. you
Mm-hmm.
know, how many emails have you received where they listed the product and what the product can do? I mean, buying a car, it's got this size engine, it's this color, it can, but so what? How does that help me? We knew that 40 years ago, but
Mm-hmm.
we found ways
Mm-hmm.
around that. And the customers knew less about the product than we did. The world's changed. Now we're restricted to this little environment where I see you on a small screen, you see me on a small screen. Worse still, you've cut your video off,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, back to basics and stick to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's one other component that's changed. Very, very briefly, we've talked about when we worked in an office and we were salespeople, we had the ability to talk to other salespeople. You had the ability to sit down as you passed each other in a corridor and said,
Mm-hmm.
"Look, I've got this account. Give me some advice." That's now gone
Mm-hmm.
away, right?
Yes.
But we're as human beings, we're social animals, and so
Mm-hmm.
my other last bit of advice to any salesperson or sales manager would be get that back. Who are your
Mm-hmm.
mentors? Who are your colleagues? Get a coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not a person necessarily who's going to train you, but get a coach that you can talk to for an hour a week or half an hour a week to give you feedback. Because
Mm-hmm.
there's this salespeople believe they can do it on their own. They cannot,
Mm-hmm.
like anybody else. I see HR doing that in companies here in the Philippines. They look to the CEO for guidance. Sometimes he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
know, and he
Yes.
needs someone to talk to. Well, we
Yeah.
also need people to talk to, and so we have to use the same technology to reach out to our
Mm-hmm.
colleagues and peers and get feedback because
Mm-hmm.
we're in this, the famous saying of no man is an island. It's now
Yes.
more true than ever before, so that would be the other thing I'd say. Talk to colleagues, even pay for people to give you advice where
Mm-hmm.
they have no emotions vested in you, because it gives you,
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't take the advice, you can go back and think about it and digest it. They
Mm-hmm.
may have a point of view that helps you win that sale.
And I may add to that, sales is a team sport,
It
as you've
is.
also mentioned before.
It very much
Um,
so.
but salespeople would really think, how highly competitive salespeople are, especially if there's some competition that's
Yep.
existing in an organization. And before, Edward, territories made sense.
Yep.
Now I've heard that a lot of organizations, because of this virtual selling thing, they've practically removed the territories, and anybody
Yeah.
can sell to anyone.
Yeah.
Uh, sales is a team sport. Edward's saying, bring that back, bring that practice of checking in with a fellow salesperson. What would you do if you were in my shoes? You have handled this account before, or you've handled something in this industry before. Any tips from me? It should not stop, even if we are physically disconnected
Yeah.
with each
Hundred
other.
percent. 100%.
And so, Edward, what we're learning here from this session with you is go back to basics.
Yes.
Find people to mentor you to continuously, because nobody may have the right prescription on what to do during this time. Eh?
And you know what? I think you hit on something very, very important, and that is that. I
Mm,
mean, just go to LinkedIn. No disrespect to everybody, but since March, the proliferation of experts has been phenomenal. I mean, experts are coming out of the woodwork. I didn't know that there were so many experts on so many different subjects.
yeah, yeah.
I, you know, find the ones who are the real experts. Find the ones who
Mm,
are the real mentors, the people who have got
mm,
that knowledge, and develop relationships with them. Hire them, invest in
mm,
them so that they can
mm,
help. Even after 40 years, there are people I
mm,
call every day, and they'll say something, and I'll think to myself, my God, why didn't I think of that? Right?
mhm,
And sometimes it's the obvious. So yes, find the ones that are the true mentors, the true experts, develop those
mm,
relationships. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And
yes.
in the same way, they'll come to you one day. So yes, salespeople are competitive, but in the long run, helping each other is the only way to go. You can't do it alone, especially now. It's super difficult.
And thank you for raising LinkedIn, and to our listeners, Edward and myself and my team are very active in LinkedIn. Yes, we've got nothing to do last March. Yes, a lot of us are sales people with services and products. We didn't know what to do, so we were on panic mode. We were looking for sources of revenue. LinkedIn was there. Facebook saturated, or maybe
Yep.
the right people that you're looking for are not in Facebook, but LinkedIn. As Gary Vaynerchuk once said, Edward, if you are doing B2B and you don't have strong presence in LinkedIn, you're doomed, because you need to be investing in
You
LinkedIn
do.
now.
People need to know you. And so my thanks again to Coach V.
And to our sales managers out there, make sure that your team, each of your sales professionals, and yourself, you have to have that presence in LinkedIn. It may not give you short-term results, but this is the way to go.
It
Okay?
is.
The branding, whether you're selling insurance, you're selling IT solutions, whatever you're selling, you need to be seen, as Edward mentioned, as an expert,
Yep.
as a genuine expert. Okay?
Yeah.
So your
I think
people
that's
need
the
to
key.
put up a lot of things.
Yep. Yep.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Wow. So much, and time flew by, Edward. This is not the usual, conversation where we really, we're structured. I like it that we were jumping from one topic to another, but it just reinforces what we all need to do. Don't make selling in this new normal complicated, my dear friends. It's not complicated. It's
True.
going back to
It
basics.
is. It
Eh,
is.
and then If you have a technology barrier, just like using this, that's tactical. You can Google that now how to present in. But yes, you can know your customer. Be prepared. Remember Edward's experience. What if the customer asks you point blank at the start of the meeting, instead of us telling you what we need, why don't you tell us what we need and
Yeah.
provide it?
Yes.
Edward, as a last statement from you. Now, I know this is selling in the new normal. That's our topic. I also love your advocacy on mental health. If you can just address our listeners, because if you're in sales and you're not making money, it adds to the pressure, or perhaps to our listeners in general. How do we stay strong, mentally strong during this time?
I think that and you made a very important point. Mental illness creates a circular problem. Once you start worrying, it affects your work. The fact that your work becomes affected affects your worry. And now anxiety steps in. Anxiety then is the precursor to depression. And both of those can literally ruin your life. And there are things to do. I think one is do some reading and recognize the warning signs. If it's difficult to get out of bed, if you're not in the mood very often, if you want to take more naps than normal, if you're feeling down more normal, there are some warning signs. But there are things to do. For me, over the last 40 years, family. My wife, my daughter, being able to have honest, open discussions, um, to crazy things like sun. Go out in
Mm-hmm.
the sun, stand in the
Mm-hmm.
sunshine. There's that warmth, the vitamin D, that actually helps. Um, and this
And you
doesn't
don't
have.
have to go to the beach, right? You don't have to go to the beach to
You
do that.
don't. I mean, I walk around outside in the garden. Exercise. You've got to exercise, right? If you're physically unwell, it's the next step to having some sort of mental unwellness is very simple, right? You've got to be physically fit, um, and be kind on yourself. Some people, the Elon Musks of the world and the Steve Jobs of the world, are very happy to work 22 hours a day. I can't do that. And it's recognizing what can you do, what can't you do. Just because your friends are working 20-hour days doesn't mean you have to. you know
Mm-hmm.
Schedule your day, take breaks, and love yourself. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you make a mistake, don't self-flagellate. Don't beat yourself up and tear yourself apart and how could I have done that. These are all steps that become circular, and it's
Mm-hmm.
easier and easier to fall into that trap. You make a mistake, move on. The best of us all make mistakes and make them regularly, right? Presidents of countries get things wrong. Welcome, we're human. We're human, right? Um, so it's being attuned to things that are out of normal, and then I think reach out for help. Look
Mm-hmm.
up Google, look up LinkedIn. Are there people who are specialists in this area? Do a bit of research and reach out before it gets to the stage where you're headed towards medication, because that now
Mm-hmm.
creates a whole new spectrum of issues. So, and we talked about it in sales. Reach out, talk to people, ask for help. We have no problem in talking about our physical ailments. Why
Mm-hmm.
is there a stigma about talking about mental ailments? It's an ailment. It's no different at all. Reach out and ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a bonus from Edward. Again, selling in the new normal also made me realize a lot of things. Made me recall that what we have before still works, more relevant than now. Go back to basics, and of course, love yourself.
Yep.
You have to forgive yourself for things, but you also have to continuously strive to stay strong
Yep.
and hang in there. Hang in
Absolutely.
there. Right?
Absolutely. It's
Continue to make progress.
a term you made it. I remember. I can't remember whether you wrote it or whether you talked about it in one of your posts. But you mentioned the word hustle, and it
Yes.
stuck with me as I can't get that out of my mind. I think that one of the keys is we have to continue to hustle, not in a bad way, but in the
Yes.
good interpretation of that word.
Mhm. I like it that you mentioned hustle, because a lot of people associate hustle with lack of mental or lack of work-life balance, no? Killing yourself. Hustling is just, you have a goal, you continue to work hard for it,
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. First, again, to our listeners, Edward and I have been interacting through LinkedIn. We've been commenting on each other posts. But Edward, I really enjoyed this time with you. It was unstructured, no? Gained a lot of insights from you, and we'll be happy to return the favor in whatever way, any help that you need in the near future. Louis Banta, Hello World Podcast, and the LJMB team is here to support you. I'll see you in LinkedIn. We have a common friend, we have a common mentor. That's Coach V. Coach V. Edward saying hi here. And to our listeners, go and improve skills, adapt what you have, your process, and the skills in this new normal. Once again, our guest in episode 13, Edward Musiak. Edward, can you just greet our listeners again? Hello, world.
Hello, world, and thank you, Louis and team.
This is Louis Banta of LJMB. Thank you for watching my video. To watch more videos like this, click subscribe and hit the bell icon below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below, and share it to others.